Hey guys, welcome to this guest lesson on integrating custom CSS into your Shopify website design process. I am so excited to share a little bit of this customization with y'all and help you understand how to use it a bit better with Shopify so that you can really take your themes to the next level. I'm Lydia. I am the owner of Telto Design Co., where I specialize in strategy and brand and web design. I work with a lot of service-based businesses, but because of Shopify, I've also been able to start adding product-based businesses to the types of clients that I work with. I'm the owner of the CSS Dictionary and the CSS Mastermind, and really love getting to teach other designers how to code. And I'm based in Atlanta and love to spend time outdoors, spend time with family when I am not working. So how I started coding, a little bit more about how I got here. I really was finding myself wanting to customize my designs further and didn't like feeling stuck in a theme. I noticed that a lot of the themes, while they were a really great start, I wanted to kind of take them to the next level, and I wanted mobile designs to feel a little bit more user-friendly. I wanted desktop designs to feel a little bit more intentional. And overall, I really wanted to create designs that were fitting for what my clients were needing a little bit more, as well as designs that felt a little bit more like my own personal style as a designer. Several resources that I use to start learning how to code. W3 Schools is an awesome, totally free resource on just the internet. You can Google it. That explains all of the different types of coding, different types of languages, and it's just a really helpful way to kind of start familiarizing yourself with code. Code Playground is something else that's really great. It's not customized for any specific platform, so it's a great way to kind of just learn the CSS basics. And you can start by practicing with any different language, actually CSS, HTML, JavaScript, which we'll talk about in a second. And as you practice, it is actually executing the design over on the other side of the site. So it's really helpful to kind of learn as you go. Like I said, have a resource called the CSS Dictionary, which I put together when I was learning how to code kind of as a reference for myself. And then there's a number of plugin shops for Shopify that are really helpful if you want to accomplish something specific on a site. You can just type in what you're looking to change the width of a button, something like that, and type in plugin after it, and it will pull up all different kinds of plugin shops that are made specifically for Shopify. So why coding is so important? I think that understanding how to use CSS within Shopify truly allows for so much customization, like we talked about, outside the bounds of a Shopify theme. And it can let you create designs that are much more specific for your client rather than trying to kind of fit into a one-size-fits-all solution. So a little bit about my own story with coding. When I started adding custom CSS into my site design, I truly felt like the value of my work increased overnight. I charged $200 for my first site design, probably like many of you, started off super low. And now I confidently charge 5 figures because of the value that custom components and functionality and movement all were able to add into my process because of custom CSS. So we'll mostly focus on CSS, but I want to give a little bit of an overview on a couple of different coding languages because I think that it's helpful to understand how they all work together so that you can figure out what language that you need to accomplish something on a site. So for starters, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it controls the content on a website. So any of those things that you're probably asking your clients for, copy, images, links, what a button's going to say, what you might want to say in a contact form, all of that good stuff. And something that's important to know is that even if you are working within a theme or within a platform like Shopify that allows a lot of drag and drop and doesn't require you to write code from scratch, Shopify is actually converting everything that you're writing in a text box into HTML. So any content, you're writing it into your site just like normal, and then Shopify is turning that into code as you write. So in a second, we'll look at kind of the back end of the site, how you can edit code, and you'll see all of this to be true when we get over there. Next up is CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's used to target the design elements on a website. Another way to think of it is that it styles the HTML. So it takes all of that content and it brings the design elements to it. So you might write a sentence, that's HTML, but then if you want to change the color, that's CSS. So fonts, color, and it also can control how a site looks differently on different devices. There's a lot of customization that you're able to accomplish there as well. And just like HTML, how even when you're using the Shopify editor and not writing code, but it's turning it into code, the same is true with CSS. So if you're in the styles panel in Shopify and you're trying to change a font size or a font color, things like that, Shopify is again taking all of that and turning it right into CSS for you. And the people who build the themes are writing a ton of CSS so that you're getting a template that is styled before you even start customizing. The last kind of language that we'll talk about is JavaScript. A lot of times people call it JS for short, and JavaScript is used to target the actions on a website. So it primarily affects how a user is interacting with a site after the page is loaded. So rollovers, pop-ups, any type of movement or action is going to fall into the category of JavaScript. Just a couple of possibilities with CSS. Customizing with color, using custom fonts. You can change padding. I found that to be really helpful, especially with Shopify. A lot of times the padding to me feels like it needs to be tweaked a little bit, or I just kind of have a different preference than the way the theme was written. You can make a lot of image customizations, mobile customizations. You can change things on the blog, buttons and navigation styling. I love being able to swap different logos for different pages, or like, for example, if you want to use a little bit more complicated logo on a desktop site, but it's just too small on mobile, you can swap that out with CSS. Another thing I like to do is use images as backgrounds, especially in something like a footer. It just allows you to kind of customize things a bit more, make things feel just a little bit more specific to your client. And then you can do some text animations with CSS as well without even having to pull in that JavaScript, just because they're a little bit more simple. So just to kind of get your brain thinking about some of what you can do with CSS and Shopify, here is a starting point. Next up, locating the CSS file in Shopify. So when you are in your platform, you'll see it look just like this screenshot, and you'll click on Online Store, and then you'll click on Actions, and then you'll click Edit Code, and it will pull up all of this coding. And to target the CSS, you want to look for a file that's called theme.css.liquid or something like that. You can also search files right here and just type in CSS and wait for it to pull something up. So in a second, I'm going to hop into Shopify and actually screen record myself in there for you guys, but here's just a screenshot for reference of kind of what that looks like. Another thing that I've found to be really helpful is using a split screen layout. I know that Macs allow this. I'm actually not sure about a PC, but I would imagine a lot of you guys are Apple users. So in the top left corner of any site, you'll see the kind of minimize and maximize buttons, the green and the yellow. If you click and hold down the green button, it will give you the option of toggling something over to only be on the left side of the screen or the right side. So I like to work in my code just like this, where I've got the site pulled up on one side and then the coding panel pulled up on the other, or the coding file. Some platforms, if any of you guys are moving to Shopify from something like Squarespace will let you customize code while you're looking at the site. With Shopify, something that you just have to get used to is that you can't have both in the same panel. So you have to write the code and then go back to the site and refresh it to be able to see the changes that you've made. So I found this split screen layout on a Mac to be really helpful in kind of streamlining that process. Next up is using the inspect tool. So if you guys are new to code, there's something called the inspect tool that even if you're not a member of a website, you can do it on Google, anything else without having any back-end access. You can actually pull up all of the code for the whole site. So my favorite way to do that is just with a shortcut, holding down Option, Command, and C all at the same time. But you can also click View, Developer, and then Dev Tools. This is in Chrome. Safari is a little bit different, but you can always just search Developer Tool or Inspect Tool on whatever your preferred platform is, and it will tell you how to pull that up. So you can roll over anything on a site when you've got this pulled up, and then it will show you all of the code. So I know this is small, but one thing to note here is that I changed the padding on this logo. So I was able to use the inspect tool to find the ID, which is store title image, and then I was able to change the max width and the max height by adding that in the back end of the site. But then I'm able to view all of that right here, so I can kind of see how things are starting to work together. It's also really fun to kind of just like get a hang of coding, start familiarizing yourself with it, to find websites that inspire you, maybe that another designer did, maybe just a random site that you've seen somewhere, and to go into the developer tools of that site and look at some of the changes that they've made within CSS. And you can practice implementing those on your own sites as well. So I'm going to switch off of the slides for just a minute and hop into Chrome. So here's what this looks like on a site that I designed recently. When you come down to the online store page, this is what it pulls up. And then you'll click actions, edit code. And you can see right here, this is all of the code that I wrote for this site. But then if we keep scrolling down, you'll actually see this is the end of my code. This is all of the code that was written for the whole site just by the way that the theme was written. So right here, I'm basically overwriting anything that has been written below. Something that is good to know about this is that, we'll talk about this in a second, but CSS is always working kind of from the top down. So anything that's at the bottom is always going to overwrite anything that's at the top, except for if you use this important key. So when I'm putting my code into Shopify, when I do it at the top, I pretty much add an important on everything so that I can make sure that what I'm doing is actually working. So I'm going to open up another window and go to this website that I designed directly. My Wi-Fi is a little bit slow today, but then if I hop into the backend by clicking Option Command C, you can see all of this inspect tool. So you can click or unclick this little cursor, but once it's clicked, it lets you roll over anything. So like, for example, I wanted to change the way that this image was looking. So when I clicked on it, that's where it showed me the store title image. So then I can copy that. I just used a Command C to copy, and then I can hop back into my CSS panel and I can paste right here to where it says store logo. And then I've changed that margin top. So that is what that looks like. And then all the way down, I did the same thing. So I just found whatever I wanted to target in Squarespace. Say, for example, I wanted to make these a full width. I rolled over it and it told me that this was the collection label. So again, I copied it, and you can come back here and you can see right where I've pasted it, featured collections, collection label. And then I was able to make the text uppercase. I changed the font size. I adjusted the text shadow. There was a shadow and I wanted to take it away. I also changed the letter spacing. I changed the background color here, and then I changed the padding and all of that there as well. Something else that's helpful to know too is about Shopify sections. So coming back over that and grabbing that panel, we can kind of select, and you just have to play with it for a second, but you should be able to find in here some section IDs. So notice where this says data section ID, and then you can copy and paste this and it will let you target something specifically in here. So if I wanted to change the font family from something besides Laura, I could grab this ID and then go back into my CSS editor and do that. And then another thing that's helpful to know with this inspect tool, so you can kind of see what things will look like. So you can use these checkboxes. You can tell I changed the font family to Laura, but if I uncheck it, it's sending it right back to the way that it used to be. I can also change the font weight. I could change the font color. It was going back to black. So it's helpful to know, and even things like if we want to come back up here and say we want to make the font thicker, we could change it to 600 just to test it out and see what it's going to look like. We can go back to 400. We could go down to 300. So it's just helpful to be able to play around. And like I said, you can actually do this on any website. It does not have to be a Shopify site or a site that you're a member of. So you could go even to Google, and you could go into the inspect panel, and then we could roll over all of these different sections. We could see that this is called input. We can see what the background color is, the font size. So it's really fun to kind of start familiarizing yourself with this, so that then when you go into a Shopify site or any other site you're designing, you can kind of start to integrate things together. So coming back to these slides, just a couple of my favorite CSS tips. Label your code. So the marks, slashes, like any backslash and asterisks, are not fed into CSS. So they're really helpful markers to create titles and sections in the editor. I'll show you this again in this code. So I have put something here that just has my name so that I know this is all coding that I did. And then I've done a homepage section, and I've put a space between every single thing. You can tell it's just really easy to read. I changed some things on product pages, so I made a separate section there. So just really helpful to know. The more that you organize your code, the easier it is for you to go back and read and kind of decipher. My next tip, it's really helpful to tab a new line into your CSS editor, again, like I just showed you. If you press Command F on your keyboard, it brings up the Find tool and it allows you to search within your CSS editor or CSS file. So that's something that's really helpful when you're working in Shopify and you've just got this huge file of CSS. If you're trying to find a font or something from a specific section or a specific color, you can just click Command F. I'll show you guys this really quickly as well. So Command F, it brings up search, so I could type in like store logo and it will show me all of the places where that's the case. And you can just click down through all of them. There's only 2. I was going to type both of those, but it's just super helpful because you're working in a platform where you've got thousands and thousands of lines of code. So it's a great way to be able to search through it. Tip number 4, this is one of my favorites. Start just an empty Google Doc, a note on your computer or phone, something that you can keep all of your most used code snippets so that you can easily copy and paste them for quick use. So if you find yourself consistently customizing the store logo to a certain amount of padding or margin, you can just copy and paste that from one site, paste it into a Google Doc, and then that way you've got it for reference if it's something that you're using on a lot of sites. Another tip, most problems with CSS arise from typos, missing tags, missing colons or semicolons, and missing brackets. So if you get an error warning, it's really important to go back and check those things. Oftentimes, it's a pretty quick fix. I wanted to be able to show you guys some examples of Shopify sites that I've customized with code, just to give you a little bit more of an idea of some of the things that are possible. So this theme, I wanted to make the buttons full width. I felt like they were just a little bit more obvious. It felt a little bit more my style. So I was able to use that inspect tool and make those full width. I was also able to change the background of these sections and the background of the footer as well. Another thing I did was, you can see they're very small in this slide, but the social media icons down here, they were really, really big. And so I targeted those and made them a little bit smaller. I just wanted it to feel a little bit more subtle. And then up here as well, I felt like the header was a little bit too thick for me, had a little bit too much padding. So I was able to minimize that. And then I also changed the logo on mobile to make it just a little bit more readable. Here is another site. This was another favorite of mine. So I uploaded an image, this dotted pattern, into the footer. Just a little bit more interest, wanted to add something. You can see it's a very simple, very clean site. So I wanted to just add something that felt a little bit more custom. I was able to use CSS to do that. This is the site that we were just looking at, so you've already seen a lot of these changes, but I changed what these kind of like category examples looked like. I changed a lot of the margins up here. I changed some things in the footer as well. And here is one more example. I wanted these reviews to alternate different sides. I also wanted there to be a darker overlay to make the white text pop out a little bit more over this header image. Wanted to change the size of these images here. And then I also wanted to change the text size and the color of this announcement bar. So again, I was able to accomplish all of that with code. So this brings us to the end of my presentation. I hope that it's been really helpful to just get a little bit of direction for how to code within Shopify, some of the ways that I do that, and how you can kind of take your sites to the next level with a little bit of custom CSS. So thank you guys so much. You can find me at telltaledesign.co or thecsdictionary.com. My Instagram, unfortunately, was recently deactivated by Instagram, so it's a work in progress, but the CSS Dictionary is where I am on social media for now. And then I also have an exclusive 20% discount on a dictionary that's new of mine called the Rules and Properties Dictionary, just for you guys. You can use the code AmplifyShopify for that. And the Rules and Properties Dictionary basically is exactly what I was just walking y'all through in terms of if you want to change the font size, needing to know that you need to use font-size. So it's a whole dictionary of all of that good stuff. You can read more about it at the cssdictionary.com/rules, and you can get 20% off with that code. So I'd love to connect with you guys on social media. If you have any more questions about coding, I would love to be able to answer them. Feel free to send me a DM. or connect with me through my website. But I hope this has been helpful, and I'm so excited to see more as you guys continue to learn Shopify with Morgan and hopefully get to learn a little bit of CSS as well.